What's up guys, Justin here for Team Shenanigans, and today I'll be bringing you guys my newly updated Legend Hero deck profile. I was trying to get this up a little sooner, but I've been tweaking with a lot of the ratios and the spells and the monsters and everything. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Now this is after the latest boosters, so we've got our new set spell and our new, well, we just got two new spells. But they're both really good, and they both add a lot of versatility and I want to say consistency to the deck in different ways. So of course, flag is Legend World, and my buddy is Red Arthur, and we'll get into him in a second, of course. So starting out, start with the size 3s as usual. Run 3 copies of Fairy King Oberon. I knocked him down to 3 because 4 was just getting way too cloggy in my hand, and you don't want to have to call Oberon out early. You'd rather call Scold, because Oberon at the earliest is only going to be live by your second turn at the earliest, unless you just open broken with like 2 All Kings and your set spell and just get really lucky on your mills and the gauge you pay. So, you know, as usual, 927 double attack, and if you have 7 or more heroes or fairies in the drop, he nullifies all your opponent's monsters' abilities, and his ability can't be nullified. So it's pretty good. It can help in the matchup against Great Fate, where you can still kill their Astraeus and turn off their what's it called, Frozen Sword. Great Fate, yeah. I said it already. I have that deck and I couldn't remember the name of the freaking card. Anyway, moving on, 4 copies of Scold, because Scold is just pure toolboxing in card form, basically. A 7/3/5, move in Soul Guard, call cost, pay 2 gauge, put the top card of your deck into her soul, and the ability to ditch a card from hand once per turn and look at either the top 3 cards of your deck or your opponent's deck. You usually always do yours because it's better to stack your stuff than your opponent's usually. And then draw a card. So, you know, you have your usual combo with her and All It All, where All It All will give you the card back and a free gauge, and you know the 2 cards you're going to draw off her and All It All and the gauge you're going to pay. So very good card, and this is your main target for both these both the skills of one of the new spells we'll get into in a minute. Next, moving on to the size 2s, 4 copies of the Buddy Red Arthur. You can transform in you can transform into it by paying a gauge and a life, and it doesn't have equipment change, but it's basically the same thing, because as part of the transform cost, you can choose to bounce up to 1 item you're equipped into to your hand. So it keeps you from equipping over items if you have to equip into your Galatine first for some reason. Or you can just call it by paying a gauge. And if you have 4 more different heroes in your drop, he gains double attack. And that's really nice on stats of 5/2, 5/2/5. Would be nice if he had 6k power instead, because a lot of wall decks are hitting that 6k number now on defense than 5k like it used to be. As the game progresses, and of course as the game progresses, the stats have to kind of go up a little bit, and there is that bit of power creep. But we do run a size 0 in this deck to help with that. So he really helps you with your little your OTK pushes, basically. And the 5k defense can force your opponent into having a link attack rather than just little pokes, which baits them right into a Holy Grail, so you can just use 1 null to, you know. Next, I run 2 copies of Brynhildr. Just basically a smaller Scold. Move Soul Guard, costs 1 gauge, and its stats are 5/2/3. It's basically all it does. It's just, if you don't draw into your Scold, you can plop down a Brynhildr if you see it, and they have to attack it twice before getting to you. It just basically helps you, just like Scold. It doesn't help you turbo through the deck, but it still gets you that extra card in your drop zone by getting a card into its soul. Hopefully it was a hero, so it can kick off your Arthur, your Galatine, or your Oberon. So that could help at some points. And the Soul Guard's nice. And this is an open center deck, so movers are always good. Next, run 3 copies of Alking, a 4/2/5, so really decent stats, doesn't cost any gauge to call out, and it's got a once per turn ability where you can mill the top 3 cards of your deck and then destroy an item or a set spell on your opponent's side of the field. This card is very good for matchup against any deck that requires its item to be on the field and the item is destroyable. Of course, with Dragon Forces out running rampant everywhere right now, you can't target those, but you can at least hit like any set spells like a Katana World deck might be using, or Executioners, or Guardians, or even 72s. You can pop their little annoying set spells. 72 Pillars, like, you only ever run like 2 of, what's it called? Emergency Ward Neverland, and like the other one, Barking Solomon, as a 1 of. So you pop that one Barking Solomon, they're usually not going to have a second copy, if it's the normal meta build that you see everywhere. So it's very good card, very versatile, and even if they don't have a target on the field, you still mill those cards to turbo through your deck, and because in Bushiroad games you fulfill as much of the effect as possible. So even if you don't have something you can target to destroy, you can still mill and be like, oh, well, sorry, I can't destroy anything, my bad. It would be nice if you could target your own stuff too, because then you could pop this and add a Grail back to hand or an item back to hand, and that would be really funny. But sadly, you can't, because it does specify your opponents. Why you gotta ruin my dreams, Bushiroad. And now we're going to go into the size zeros. This is easily just one of the best cards in the Legend world. All-knowing Awadal. Stats are 3/1/1, so not very great stats, but you're not really ever going to be really wanting to call this card out. Its first ability is kind of useless in this deck anyway. It makes it where if it's on the field, your great spells can't be nullified. You don't run any great spells in this deck. Maybe heroes eventually will get a great spell we can run with ease, and it'll be really good, and it'll make Awadal better for another reason. But the skill that you really always use in this deck is when this card is discarded, you gauge 1, draw 1. So it's just amazing to match with Scold. Sadly, I don't have space for Merlin, just doesn't work in this deck, and I'm not running damage controls right now. I might consider putting them in later, but I'm just choosing to run my nulls right now instead, and it's been working out for me so far. So for Awadal, just there for consistency, because it's never a bad card. Next, I run 3 copies of Blizzard. I don't really feel like pronouncing his entire name. He's a 2/1/2, so less attack than Awadal, same crit, more defense, but none of that matters, because he has one really good effect and one pretty decent effect. The decent effect is when he's discarded from your hand, you can pay a gauge to destroy a size 2 or lower. So in this deck I call that decent because, again, your only source of discarding is Scold. So you're not really... I can't think of an instance ever where I've discarded him with Scold and then paid a gauge to destroy my opponent's center. I guess you could do it if you have the rest of your OTK set up and you want to just clear out the center. You could do that, but I haven't reached a situation where I've had to yet. The ability I play this card for is all other heroes on your field get power plus 1000. So he doesn't give it to himself, but that really doesn't matter. But what he does do is he makes your Scold an 8k, he makes your Oberon a 10k, and the biggest thing is he makes your Arthur a 6k. So now going up against any Jaeger that has 6k defense, just anything that has 6k defense, I believe the new Makuro has 6k defense, you don't have to link attack. So it makes Red Arthur's double attack not basically null and void by forcing you to link attack with things. Just very good card. And closing out the size zeros, we run 1 copy of OG Countdown and 1 copy of Dawn of the Distant Days. I like these both at 1 just because if you mill this Dawn, you can keep paying a life to bring him back just for attack consistency, because you're usually going to aim to have your size 3s on the board, and running only 3 Blizzard because I don't want to run 4 because I don't want it to get clogged too much. these are very easily killable, and you don't really want to have to call your all. So you want to have that little extra poking attack or anything. And OG Countdown's 4K power is really nice for center clearing, so then you can swing face for with your 2 crit and higher attacks, and just being able to pay a life to bring him back every turn. While Dawn of the Distant Days is basically the same thing. It's less power, but you don't have to pay a life to keep bringing him back. As long as he's not destroyed, you can just keep bouncing him back to your hand after every attack. So they're just there for consistency. Now next, I only run 4 items in a Heroes Legend World deck, which is really weird for me since being an OG Heroes player. You know, we've always ran so many items just for toolboxing, but now with Arthur and this item, Galatine, it's really not needed. Galatine is a 3k power, 2 crit item, and honestly my only beef with this item is I really wish it was 4k power instead. I don't think that would have been OP at all, Bushy Road. You could have even made it 5k, honestly, because sometimes against some decks, by the time you counter equip into this, it's kind of hard to swing over things if you've already, you kind of have to, I don't know, with his double attack and then a double attack here, you have to kind of time everything out right. But the 2 crit is still amazing for, you know, your OTK pushes. You usually want their center to be open anyway. Its ability is Sword of the Calling. You can only use this ability once per turn. So you can't counter equip into several, because that would be so busted. It has the equipment change ability, and the way Sword of the Calling works is you have to have 4 more different heroes in your drop zone, just like Red Arthur, and you counter equip into this. So it's got equipment change, so you double attack with your Red Arthur and then equip into this. Red Arthur bounces back to your hand and then you swing again. So this is just a nice 6 crit combo combined with your other, your double attacking Oberon, your 3 crit Scold. It's just very nice. And then like hopefully you have like a 1 crit size 0 on the field. Just makes for a lot of damage they have to deal with. You're looking at 6, 10, 11 or 10 damage you're threatening. I think I counted that right. I don't know. Bad at math. That's why I'm bad at card games. Anyway, going on to the spells, I run 4 copies of Holy Grail. It's your normal attack null. As long as you don't have a monster in the center, you cast this and nullify any attack on your opponent's turn. So, very good card. Like I said, you bait them into link attacking over Red Arthur and blah. Next, I was really iffy on this card at first, and I was testing out damage controls, but I really like protecting my monsters too much. And even though, like I said, forcing them to link attack over Red Arthur is really nice, and Scorner Gremlin can't stop link attacks, there's still just as many instances where they do have a monster with over 5k power or more, with 5k power or more, that doesn't need a link attack. And Swarm Gremlin helps stop that. It helps you know, stop a non-link attack on you when you're equipped into Red Arthur. He can help keep your Scold around a little longer. He can keep them from like swinging into Oberon with something that has double attack, trying to kill Oberon, and then their double attack will trigger and they'll restand. So, and it's just a nice card. I wish we would get a different type of null, would be nice, like some sort of null that if you have as a certain amount of heroes in drop, you like gain a gauge or something like that. That'd be really nice. But until then, we've just got Holy Grail and stuck with Scorn and Gremlin, which isn't a bad card. Just Solomon Shield Clone, counter speed, nullify an attack as long as it's not a link attack. So, not a bad card, but I wish there were more options. And we have the new damage reducing spell, and I thought about running that, but then again, right now stopping attacks to save your monsters, especially since there's not as much of there's a plussing engine in this, but you can run out of cards pretty decently fast because it's not a big plussing engine. A lot of it's a break even. The only things you're plussing off of are Symbol Guard and All, honestly. Other than that, like Skull's a break even, Oswear Guard's a break even, and then you're dedicating cards to the field with like your set spell and such. So, speaking of your set spell, run 3 copies of Heroes Base Camelot. You can only have one of this set on the field at a time, and you know, set spells, once it's set, it stays there. whenever you equip into a hero item or call a hero monster, you mill the top card of your deck and then gauge one. And then if this card is ever destroyed, you add a hero item or a holy grail from your drop zone to your hand. So the destruction effect, I haven't actually had anybody destroy it for me yet, for me to do that. It's normally something they just leave there, which is also nice because it helps keep reimbursing you for your gauge. Which, you know, we used to run Zlatarog in this deck, but now there's just no space for it in my opinion. So having an extra gauge engine is really nice, and it's hero attribute. Plus it mills for you, which is really nice. So if you call an All King and do his skill, you're milling 4 cards. And that is really good at turboing for your Red Arthur skill, your Galatine skill, and your Oberon skill. So it's really nice, and you could even get cheeky and mill a Count Dawn. Or a Breathing Guard, and now you can cast Symbol Guard without paying a gauge. So now you just technically plus 2 gauge because you got a gauge off this, and now you don't have to pay the gauge for this, and just nice things are happening for you. You can also run Caliburn Grief in this, which I would recommend siding, and Caliburn Grief will destroy this, as it destroys all set spells and monsters on the field, and then you get an item or a Holy Grail to your hand. So that's nice. That's a nice little combo you can run. I just don't have Holy Grail. I mean, I hope I have Holy Grail in it. I just don't have Caliburn Grief in the main right now. I would definitely recommend siding it though. So next, I run 3 copies of Osweirgard. I was running Ruin. What's it called? Darkness Rune. I keep wanting to call it Ruin Guard. Darkness Rune instead of this. Because Darkness Rune is a really good card, but I chose to side Darkness Rune and main Osweirgard because in our shop challenge, I found that every round going into game 2, I don't know if it was just the decks that were there or what, I sided into Osweirgard and sided out Darkness Rune every time. Because with the set spell now, I found that I just didn't often need to get the gauge, and that was honestly the main reason I was running it. Because destroying a size 1 is nice, but now a lot of size 1s or lower have, like you have your Jaegers where they call, what's his name, Daikaido, and it's treated as a size 1, but it has Soul Guard, so, I mean, might as well not. And there is stuff you can, when you cast Darkness Rune, you can choose to remove Soul, but you're only removing 1 Soul. I mean, I still side Darkness Rune, don't get me wrong. I just feel like this card does more for the deck with these new spells and the way the deck's built right now. Because I've done all this jabbering, I haven't said anything about what it does yet. Counter speed, put a monster from your field into the drop zone, gain a gauge, and draw a card. So gauge 1, draw 1. The biggest thing about this is it stops penetrate. So if you have your Scold or your Brynhildr in the center, your opponent attacks at you with something with penetrate, you cast this, the monster goes away, you get a gauge, and you reimburse yourself for this card in your hand. You lost the monster, yes, but you gained a gauge and replaced this card. So you basically turn that monster into a gauge, you didn't take the penetrate damage. Or you can respond to any of their destruction effects. So they're going to destroy a monster, you're like, well, I'm going to get something out of it, I'm going to turn the monster into a gauge instead, basically. The monster still goes to the drop, you still have your hero in the drop, you gain a gauge and replace this card. So it's a very nice card. Or if you don't have this in your hand, or you don't have Thevis Guard, you can cast this. If you have to win that turn, you have to kill your opponent that turn. You can cast this after you attack with your Oberon or your Scold or whatever to gauge 1, draw 1. And then, now if you didn't have the gauge for this and you top deck this, you have the gauge for it and you can cast it to restand a hero. Or you can hopefully top deck into this. So it's just a really nice versatile card, and I really like it in the deck right now, especially with how this build operates. Next, I run 3 copies of Symbol Guard. If you have 6 or less life, pay a gauge, draw 2 cards. You can only activate Symbol Guard once per turn. And if you have a Breathing Guard in your drop, you don't have to pay the gauge to cast this. So if you mill Breathing Guard or just gauge it away and end up paying that gauge, which I would highly recommend doing, you draw 2 cards for free. And speaking of Breath and Guard, run 2 copies. Oh, I picked both up. Counter speed, when your opponent casts a spell, you can pay 2 gauge to nullify that spell, or you can pay 2 gauge and destroy a set spell. So in my opinion, it's one of the better spell nullifiers, because most spell nullifiers only nullify. They can't destroy once the spell's already out there. This can also hit set spells, which is really nice, especially, like I said, with Guardians and Executioners and such. And then, closing out the spells, run 3 copies of the new card, Tevis card. Cast cost is 1 gauge, and at counter speed you can stand a hero on your field. Or you can pay 2 life and put 2 cards from your drop zone into the soul of a monster. So it's got the nice little thing where it is aggressive. It can be an aggressive card or it can be a defensive card. The 2 life is really high, but if your opponent's got a big beefy monster on the field, or you really just want to keep your Scold around, because if you have like all adults stacked in your hand and you want to use another one next turn, you can do that. Even like, especially if you have 2 of these in hand and you want to use one for that, and next turn restand the Scold. So it's really nice. It's a very versatile card, and I really love it in the deck. Too bad it's not hero attribute, but none of the guard cards are. So, but that's my Legend World hero deck as of now, guys. Hopefully we get new cards soon, but I really like the direction the deck is going in, and I see a lot of potential in its future. And if you like this video, please leave it a like, subscribe if you haven't, and let me know what you think. And feel free to try this build out if you want, make some tweaks. Let me know how it's working out for you or what your build looks like. But until next time, guys, this is Justin for Team Shenanigans, signing out.